What if the legends that stalk the wilderness are not just stories, but a terrifying reality waiting for the unprepared? Good evening and welcome, everyone. Tonight, we have a collection of encounters that will challenge everything you think you know about the things that move in the shadows. I'd like to start with a special birthday wish for David Charles. I hope your day has been fantastic. If you'd like your own birthday shout-out, you can find the details over on our Patreon, linked below. Now, let's dim the lights and begin. I'm a 25-year-old guy from Utah, and I need to know if anyone has seen something like this. I'm almost certain I saw a wendigo or maybe a skinwalker. I know how it sounds. I'm a skeptic by nature, and I don't usually buy into the paranormal. But what I saw defies any rational explanation. Let me set the scene. I was 17, still in high school and living with my parents in a tiny town. Our backyard opened into miles of empty fields and mountains before you'd find another soul. My best friend lived next door, and we shared this vast, open space as our own. His house was on a different street that dead-ended in a cul-de-sac, a place where more houses were supposed to be built but never were. This detail becomes important later. I stayed over at his place often, mostly to avoid the tension at home. Over the years, we'd sometimes wake up to these bizarre sounds from his back porch. A heavy dragging noise and this wet, gurgling sound. His room was in the basement with a window well looking right onto the porch. It happened maybe once or twice a month, but whenever we gathered the courage to look, there was never anything there. Then, one night, everything changed. We were up late, playing games and watching movies, and we decided to go for a drive to listen to music. My friend hopped into his truck, flipped on the high beams, and swung out of the driveway, using the field as a turnaround. And that's when the headlights caught it. The thing was on all fours, naked and unnaturally large, with limbs that seemed to bend and fold in all the wrong ways. Its pale, stretched skin clung tightly to its frame. But the face is what still haunts me. Its jaw hung open, a gaping black maw like a snake unhinging, and its glistening black eyes locked onto us. In an instant, it scrambled backward into the brush, moving as if it were on rewind. We were both frozen, pale as ghosts, just staring at each other in disbelief. We tried to salvage the night, but the fear had sunk its teeth in. We ended up back in his basement, armed and waiting for the sounds to return, but they never did. I don't live there anymore, but when I visit, that empty field still feels like it's holding its breath, like something is still waiting out there. Some doors, once opened, can never be fully closed. I never imagined I'd end up in a 120-year-old log cabin in the remote woods of Missouri. But life doesn't always ask if you're ready. My fiancé, our baby, and I moved there about a month ago due to some complicated family issues. My aunt offered us her place, and with few other options, we took it. We packed everything we owned into the car and suddenly found ourselves living in a structure that looked like it belonged on a historical postcard. The cabin, built in 1903, was surrounded by dense Missouri forest that seemed to swallow all sound in that eerie, absolute way only remote woods can. For the first few weeks, things were fine. The place was old and drafty, but it felt like home. My uncle would sometimes mention strange occurrences over the years. Voices in the woods, shifting shadows where nothing should be, and knocks on the door in the dead of night. He'd always laugh it off, and we did too, chalking it up to local folklore. Then things started. It began on a Monday morning, just before sunrise. My uncle, a truck driver, had just left for the week. He called my aunt right after pulling out. "You won't believe what I just saw," he said. "There was a wolf by the fence line. I swear, it was massive." My aunt told us, and we exchanged uneasy looks. A big wolf wasn't impossible, but that's when we started seeing it. Most mornings, as the sky was just beginning to lighten, the wolf would appear at the edge of the yard. It was huge, its silhouette all wrong. It would pace just outside the tree line, then drift closer, as if it owned the land. At night, its howl was long and low, sometimes waking the baby. Here's what really unsettled us. We have dogs. They bark at everything, but they never reacted to this wolf. Not a bark, not a growl, not even a twitch of the ears. They acted like it wasn't there. That's when my stomach dropped. Animals sense predators. They react. So why were ours so indifferent? Was it because they were terrified? Or because they knew it wasn't really a wolf at all? I tried to stay rational. Maybe the wolf was sick. Maybe the dogs knew it wasn't a threat. But lying in bed at night, listening to the floorboards creak and the wind scrape the walls, those excuses felt flimsy. Then came the knocking. Too slow, spaced out taps on the door, like someone testing to see if we'd answer. Some nights it was louder, more confident. I'd stand in the hallway, holding the baby monitor, frozen, staring at the shadows near the back door. Then there were the sounds. The closest word is singing, but that doesn't do it justice. It wasn't human. It was a strange, rhythmic humming, almost patterned, like someone outside was trying to recall an old song but couldn't quite remember the tune. The sound would drift around the house, sometimes near the back window, other times from the woods, closer than it should have been. I kept brushing it off. Isolated cabins make noises. The woods have animals. But the excuses grew weaker every time the wolf appeared. For weeks, one thought gnawed at the back of my mind, a word I didn't want to think. Skinwalkers. I'm 50% Native American, and while I don't speak for any tribe, the stories I grew up with were always treated with deep respect, never as a joke. I didn't want to make that connection, but once the word entered my mind, it stuck. Especially when I started researching and saw how many details lined up. The oversized wolf, the dog's non-reaction, the knocking, the singing, the suffocating feeling of being watched from the trees. As I'm telling you this, I can hear little noises outside, crunching, shifting, a low sound that could be the wind, but I doubt it. The rational part of my brain is fighting, but the rest of me remembers the look on my uncle's face. I don't know what's happening on this land. I just know I can't wait to be free of it. My grandparents owned 80 acres of land roughly 20 miles east of Snowflake, Arizona. I'll never know why they chose that spot. Maybe it was cheap in the early days. Maybe they liked the isolation. Their mobile home sat on a low hill. The nearest neighbors were my aunt and uncle, about a mile away, and the next closest was a rancher named Stoddard, who lived 4 miles off at the base of a large bluff. My grandparents couldn't stand him. He was the kind of rancher who acted like the whole desert was his. If his cattle wandered onto your property, he'd shrug like it was your fault. More than once, my grandfather caught him cutting the barbed wire fence so his cows could graze on our land. The man had that sun-beaten, entitled arrogance some ranchers carry. The land out there is dotted with ancient Anasazi ruins, cliff dwellings, old pueblos, pottery shards. Most of it was destroyed long before archaeologists could see it, bulldozed by ranchers with backhoes hoping to find pots to sell. My family always figured Stoddard was one of them. One day, after losing a calf, Stoddard was out near the bluffs when he found it. A boulder the size of a pickup truck leaning against a sandstone face, sealing a narrow opening. His curiosity got the better of him. He brought his backhoe, tore the slab away, and uncovered a cave. It wasn't just any cave. It was an Anasazi burial chamber. Stoddard probably saw nothing but dollar signs. He went inside, took whatever caught his eye, pottery, artifacts, maybe even bones, and sold what he could. That's when the rot set in. First, he lost $500,000 in a stock market crash. Then his cattle were hit by a strange disease that swept through the herd, leaving dead animals everywhere. Financial ruin came fast. Then his wife got sick with something rare and died within months. Not long after, Stoddard was thrown from his horse and shattered his spine, never to walk again. All of this happened within a few years. He became convinced he was cursed and told anyone who would listen that disturbing the burial cave had ruined his life. Most people laughed, calling him bitter and crazy. Stoddard eventually took whatever artifacts he had left, hauled himself back to the cave, returned everything, and used his backhoe to seal the entrance again. Then one night, he abandoned his ranch completely. The house was left full of furniture, clothes in the closets, dishes in the sink. He just vanished. A few years later, a man from California bought the property, fixed up the old ranch house, and put it up for rent. Around that time, my aunt was pregnant with her first child and wanted to be closer to my grandparents. So she and her husband rented Stoddard's old place. In the daylight, it looked innocent enough. A little run down but cozy. At night, though, everything felt wrong. For the first week, nothing happened. Then the noises started. My aunt said she'd hear faint chanting late at night, drifting across the property like a carried wind. Sometimes there were drums, muted but steady. She tried to explain it away. Maybe it was the hippie woman who lived on the bluff doing rituals. Maybe her husband working nights was making her jumpy. Maybe it was pregnancy hormones. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling of being constantly watched. It got so bad she started having nightmares every single night. She finally told my grandfather, who loaned her his dog, a big, trained working mix. The moment she opened the truck door at the ranch, the dog's hackles shot up. He growled low and deep, refusing to set foot on the ground. She had to physically drag him into the house. He spent the whole night staring at the front door, and the chanting grew louder. In the morning, she found bare human footprints circling the house, adult-sized. Things only escalated. Night after night, the dog barked at the walls, drums sounded in the distance, and chanting drifted through the windows. More bare footprints appeared. My aunt was losing her grip on sleep and sanity. She finally asked my grandmother to spend the night. My grandma was a deeply religious woman, gentle and solid as a rock. She came over, cooked dinner, helped clean, and tried to create a sense of peace. Later, while my aunt napped, Grandma took a short walk near the base of the bluff. She later admitted she felt something watching her. Not like an animal, but something intelligent and full of hate. She didn't tell my aunt. As the sun set, they decided to leave for my grandparents' place. They packed up, loaded the dog, and got in the truck. My grandma turned the key. Nothing. Not even a click. They tried again. The truck was completely dead. Grandpa wasn't home when they called, so they were stranded as the night swallowed the desert whole. Then the chanting started again. The dog began to growl and something howled outside. Not a coyote, not anything they recognized. Something big moved just beyond the porch light, pacing, circling. My grandma prayed nonstop. My aunt cried quietly. They both flinched when something thumped hard against the wall. Finally, my grandmother's frantic calls got through to my grandfather. "Elvin," she whispered into the phone. "Something's inside the house. You need to come." They waited for what felt like an eternity until headlights finally appeared over the hill. Just before my grandfather reached the house, something sprinted across the dirt road in front of his truck. His headlights caught a glimpse, enough to reflect huge, gleaming red eyes. Grandpa slammed the brakes, jumped out, and screamed for them to get into his truck. He fired 2 shots into the darkness, then sped away down the dirt road. My aunt made the mistake of looking back. She saw those same red eyes watching from the edge of the headlights. The next morning, my grandfather and uncle returned to the house. They found bare footprints everywhere, and also massive coyote tracks circling the home. My aunt never went back. For years afterwards, my grandmother claimed she saw those same red eyes lurking at the edge of her property at night. Other families tried living in Stoddard's old place. None lasted more than a few months. That whole area felt off. After learning more from Native American friends, I'm convinced my family stumbled into something sacred and dangerous. Skinwalkers are known to guard ruins and curse those who disturb the dead. Whatever Stoddard awakened that night, I don't think it ever went back to sleep. Most people imagine haunted houses, but I believe entire areas can be paranormal hotspots. For me, that place is the land east of Snowflake, Arizona. The landscape is red rock, sandstone ridges, and ancient, gnarled cedars. My grandparents' mobile home was on a slow-rising hill. This is the story of my older cousin, Sam, in the summer of '91. Sam was 17. He'd gotten an underage drinking ticket at a graduation party, landing him on probation and grounded for the summer. His mom even took the keys to the pickup truck he'd worked all summer to buy. Stuck in the boonies, he helped our grandparents to pass the time. One late afternoon, he came home to find his dad, Bill, chatting with their neighbor, Jeff, a hippie-type guy everyone suspected had done a little too much LSD in the '70s. Jeff lived on the bluff adjacent to Stoddard's old place. Jeff asked Sam if he wanted to help with a project on his property for a couple $100. Sam, thinking of party money for when his parents were out of town, agreed. The next morning, Bill gave Sam his keys back, and Sam drove over to Jeff's. Jeff was loading shovels and equipment into his truck. Sam assumed they were replacing fence posts. Jeff told him to hop in, and they headed north along the top of the bluff on a 2-track dirt road. The view from up there was vast. You could see the outskirts of Snowflake, the dry wash dotted with cottonwoods, the White Mountains to the south, and the mesas to the north. To the east, in a small valley, Sam could just make out the roof of Stoddard's house. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. They drove around a small sandstone alcove, and Jeff stopped the truck. In front of them was a large ruin. Sam had seen many Anasazi ruins growing up. This one was a pile of loose sandstone, with pottery shards everywhere and large holes where someone had already dug with a backhoe. Sam felt uneasy. Jeff noticed and explained his project. He was going to excavate the ruin and open a museum on his property, charging people to see what he found. Sam argued that digging in ruins was illegal. Jeff claimed it wasn't if you owned the land, which made Sam even more uncomfortable. "What about angering spirits?" Sam asked. Jeff laughed. "You mean because of Stoddard's place? Your aunt and grandma are nice people, but I think they heard rumors and freaked themselves out. This isn't a burial ground. There are no bodies here." Sam says he should have listened to the feeling telling him to leave. But money was money, so he started shoveling. Around noon, Jeff left to make lunch, leaving Sam alone at the ruin. Sam noticed it was extremely quiet. No birds, no cicadas, nothing. On the wind, he thought he heard a faint voice but chalked it up to his nerves. When Jeff returned with sandwiches, he also brought a camera to document their progress. They worked for a week, finding a small pot, some beads, half an arrowhead. Sam was happy for a day off. He'd been fighting a feeling that something bad was going to happen. He even dreamed one night that his bed was shaking. After an uneventful weekend, Sam returned on Monday to find a backhoe parked in Jeff's driveway, loaned by another neighbor. Jeff was excited. They could make real progress now. They uncovered 3 or 4 rooms and found more artifacts over Tuesday and Wednesday, snapping pictures all the while. After filling 4 rolls of film, Jeff took them into town to be developed. This was long before digital cameras. On Thursday, they uncovered a large room in the Pueblo. In the middle was a huge block of sandstone, which piqued Jeff's curiosity. Using the backhoe, he moved it aside, revealing a black hole beneath. Something about that opening made Sam's stomach knot. Jeff was thrilled. He looked in but couldn't see anything, so he grabbed a flashlight. "It's another room," Jeff exclaimed. Sam didn't want to look. Something about that opening made his skin crawl. Jeff told Sam to go get a ladder. As Sam headed back, thunder rolled in the distance. Monsoon clouds were building. Jeff put the ladder down into the opening. Sam asked if it was safe. Jeff figured the room had been stable for 1,000 years. Jeff descended with the flashlight. "Holy hell," he called out. "Bring the camera and come down here." Sam was gripped by terror but didn't want to seem like a chicken. He grabbed the camera and descended into the black pit. It was so dark he could barely see. Jeff's flashlight beam landed on a large corrugated pot. Even with the light from the opening, the darkness felt thick. Sam realized the walls and floors were black. The air was stale and smelled strongly of soot. Jeff was excitedly moving around. A long roll of thunder boomed. "Start taking pictures," Jeff said, annoyed. "And make sure the flash is on." Sam began snapping photos. The flash briefly illuminated the room. On about the 3rd photo, he saw something that made him jump. A human skull. "Jeff, there's a skull," he squealed. Jeff, busy looking around, didn't hear him. Sam snapped another picture. "Jeff, there's a skull," he said louder. "Oh yeah," Jeff said casually. "There's a few of them down here. Looks like there was a fire." He kicked one across the room towards Sam, who jumped. "What the hell, man?" Sam said, his fear turning to anger. "This isn't right. You shouldn't be messing with bodies. Don't we need to call the cops or something?" Jeff laughed. "And tell them what?" That we found a bunch of 1,000-year-old dead Indians. Sam was furious now. Listen, Jeff, if you want to mess with this stuff, be my guest, but I'm done. There's something bad about this place. You're scared of a bunch of bones? Whatever, man. I'm not paying you to be a crybaby. Sam tossed the camera to the ground and climbed up the ladder. Jeff started cussing about the broken camera, but Sam didn't care. He walked back to Jeff's house where his truck was parked. The wind was blowing hard now, black clouds covering the sun. Lightning flashed. When he got home, he remembered his parents and sister were on their trip to Nebraska. His older brother, Zach, was at work at Pizza Hut. Exhausted, Sam lay down on the couch and fell asleep. A loud crack of thunder shook the house and jolted him awake. The house was dark. He fumbled for the light switch, but the power was out. Lightning flashed. He found a lantern and lit it. Still creeped out, he went to his bedroom to find a joint to calm his nerves. His bedroom faced the driveway. He opened the window to get some light, and in a flash of lightning, he saw something dart across the driveway. His heart skipped a beat. He heard his dog start barking. He put the joint down and closed the window, terror gnawing at his gut. He went downstairs and locked the front sliding door. That's when he heard heavy footsteps running across the porch. Now in full panic, he remembered the side door was unlocked. He bolted across the living room, tripped over a chair, and saw something run by the living room window, illuminated by lightning. He got to the side door, fumbling with the lock. The doorknob on the other side was being turned. He slammed the deadbolt home. The basement sliding glass door. He bolted down the stairs, found it already locked, and felt a moment of relief. Then another flash of lightning. In it, he saw the silhouette of what he thought was a man covered in fur, with red eyes shining from where its face should be, standing at the edge of his yard. It was very tall. Staring into those red eyes, his breath caught. Panic surging, he scrambled backward, knocking his head on a table. Crying, he got up and bolted upstairs to find the phone. He dialed 911. Nothing. The line was dead. A large thud from the roof shook him. The thing was on the roof. A gun. That was the first thing that came to mind. He ran to his parents' bedroom where they kept a shotgun. The dogs followed him in. He could still hear footsteps on the roof. He locked the bedroom door and went into the closet, the dogs huddling with him. He found the shotgun, his hands shaking violently as he loaded it. The dogs were quiet. He couldn't hear anything from the roof anymore. Where was it? He sat in the closet and waited. Hours seemed to pass. The storm moved north. Suddenly, he heard the doorknob rattling. Bang, bang, bang. A beating on the door. Boom. The shotgun went off, blowing a hole in the closet ceiling. Someone screamed, "Don't shoot!" It was his brother, Zach. Tears streamed down Sam's face. He dropped the gun, unlocked the door, and almost knocked Zach over. "What the hell, man? Why are you shooting at me?" Sam, hysterical, spilled the whole story. At the end, Zach only asked, "Okay, Sam, what did you smoke?" "Nothing, bro. I'm not high." Zach laughed. "Okay, but Mom is going to be pissed. Not only 'cause you blew a hole in their closet, but also all the mud you brought in. You better get that cleaned up." "Mud? What mud? And how did Zach get in?" "The house was locked. Zach told him the sliding glass door was wide open. The power had come back on at some point." True to Zach's word, there were red, muddy, bare footprints all around the house, and they were much larger than Sam's feet. "I bet it was Jeff," Zach concluded. "He probably came over to mess with you because he's pissed you quit and broke his camera. He knew you were freaked out." Sam wasn't sure, but it made him feel better. Yeah, he told himself it was Jeff, that asshole. "I must not have latched the sliding door properly." The noise on the roof was probably the wind blowing shingles off. It all started to make sense. He and Zach drank a few of their dad's beers, cleaned up the mud as best they could, and, after getting a buzz, decided to go confront Jeff in the morning. Zach said Jeff needed to pay for a carpet shampooer. They decided to go into town. A friend was having a party. Neither of them wanted to stay out there. The party was in the boonies with a big bonfire and about 20 teens. Sam was having a hard time enjoying himself. He kept feeling like he was being watched. The beer didn't taste right, and he wasn't socializing. I asked him what was wrong, but he just said he was tired. The full moon was rising, casting an eerie light on the sandstone bluffs and cedars. Sam gazed past the firelight and saw something move just beyond its reach. It moved behind a bush. Must be someone peeing, he thought, but his gut disagreed. Suddenly, a strange, throaty howl pierced the night. Sam jumped. He looked around, but no one else seemed to have heard it. They were all still laughing and talking. He turned and saw the large figure of a man standing just outside the firelight. He was paralyzed with fear. The man's face was in shadow, but Sam could feel his eyes piercing him. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. When he opened them, the man was gone. He told Zach he was going home. Zach decided to stay. Sam didn't want to go home, but he didn't want to stay at the party either. His mind racing, he headed east down the old Concho Highway. He tried to convince himself he was just freaking out. Jeff had scared him, and the person at the party was just someone peeing. It all made sense. He noticed something run across the highway. It was around 2 a.m., so the road was deserted. He slowed down, thinking it was a deer. Then there was a crash. Something hit the back of his truck, jerking it forward. He slammed on the brakes and looked in the rearview mirror. He caught a glimpse of shining eyes. Now in full panic, he stomped on the gas, sheer terror engulfing him. He was too afraid to look back. Then he saw something out of the corner of his eye. He turned and saw a man running next to the truck. He looked down at his speed, 70 miles per hour. He looked again, and now the coyote-like creature was looking at him. At first, its face was shrouded in darkness. Then, Sam said, it transformed before his eyes. The only way he could describe it was a demon. Large red eyes, a twisted smile, and long, sharp teeth. It threw back its head and laughed. It took a long, clawed hand and scratched along the side of the truck as it sped past, then vanished into the dark. So, this is what I remember. I was 7, living about 2 hours from Snowflake. Around 3 a.m., my family was awakened by someone pounding on the door. We watched as Dad opened it to find our cousin Sam, white as a sheet, shaking and crying. My parents were startled, trying to figure out what was happening as he babbled about demons chasing him. Mom sent us kids back to bed. The next day, my dad called a Navajo friend, and they took Sam to a medicine man near Sanders. After they returned, Sam stayed with us until his parents got back from Nebraska. When he finally went home, he never saw anything again. Years later, when we were closer, I asked him about that night, and he reluctantly told me the story. I asked my parents, and they confirmed it was the same minus one final part. The morning Sam showed up at our house, his older brother Zach went out to Jeff's to collect Sam's money. When he got there, Jeff was gone. The door to the house was wide open, and the inside was trashed, furniture overturned and broken. Jeff was missing for about 6 months. No one knew where he'd gone. He had no local family. My grandma filed a missing persons report, but the sheriff later informed her that Jeff was back east. When he finally returned, he was gaunt, looking like he'd aged 20 years in 6 months. Everyone wondered if it was drugs. Fast forward 5 or 6 years. My grandparents invited Jeff to Thanksgiving. Sam, who had long since moved away, was up for the holiday. Jeff asked Sam to come to his truck because he had something to show him. After all those years, Sam agreed. Jeff handed him a stack of photos, the very pictures Sam had taken in the ruin. Sam flipped through them, not really wanting to think about that time. He had convinced himself it was all a bunch of coincidences and that he'd freaked himself out. Jeff told him, unhappily, to look closer. Sam did. At first, he didn't see anything. But then he noticed in the shadows of the pictures there were figures, small, twisted, and evil, with the same face as the demon that had chased him. Jeff apologized to Sam but said he had to make sure he wasn't crazy. He told Sam that during the 6 months he was gone, he was hunted by this thing all the way to Oklahoma. Finally, he sought out a medicine man, returned the artifacts, and filled the ruin back in. Sam said he didn't know what happened to the pictures and didn't want to know. The past does not forget those who disturb its slumber. I'd like to share what was easily the most terrifying moment of my life, an encounter with something undoubtedly vengeful. I decided to take a walk a few nights ago. I live along the Mississippi River near East River Road in Minneapolis. I've taken this route many times before, day and night. On my way down to the woods along the riverbank, I heard a couple chattering above me on the large staircase. I looked up multiple times but saw no one. 15 minutes into my walk, things were great. I was enjoying the peace of the woods. I have a history of camping, hunting, and hiking alone. Being in the dark has never scared me. I'm neurotypical and have a strong sense of self. The sun was setting, and I decided to continue. I reached a hard-to-see bend in the path, and suddenly a woman's voice popped into my head. "Turn around." I gleefully ignored it and kept going. Turn around. I decided a log ahead would be my stopping point. Turn around echoed through my skull the second I reached that log. At that moment, a wave of inexpressible anxiety shivered through my core. I was shaking to the bone. I turned on my heel and marched back the way I came. Something deep in my essence told me if I didn't turn around at that moment, I would die. The sun had set, and I was swallowed by total darkness. The feeling of being watched doesn't even begin to describe the utter dread. I was being followed. I don't know if it was animal, human, spirit, or something in between, but the presence of impending doom behind me was unmistakable. I have never known such fear. I've had panic attacks, felt grief, felt the weight of debt, but never such utter hopelessness. I heard the woman's voice again. "Do not look back." I heeded it and marched, ignoring the shadows flickering at the edge of my vision. I rounded a bend, climbed a hill, and started to feel the presence recede slightly. I still felt followed, but from a safer distance. I slowed my pace slightly, my first mistake. In that brief relaxation, I heard another voice, not my own. A deep, raspy voice that seemed to want only to announce its presence. I felt every muscle in my back clench as I powered forward, putting space between me and that presence. My skin felt like it was shredding. Shivers doesn't describe the fight or flight reflex. My body wanted to sprint, but something deep down told me that if I ran, I would activate a prey instinct, and the hunting would begin. 10 minutes of utter pain passed. Every step I took slightly echoed by another that was not my own. The massive staircase was back in sight. In that moment, I talked myself into a moment of insanity. I decided to stop and enjoy the beauty of the city lights before me. I took a quick mental snapshot. This was the first time I stopped moving since the initial encounter, feeling slightly safe with my escape route so close. My long strides halted at a perfect angle, and behind me, I heard not one, not two, but 3 steps echo off the asphalt. I power-walked harder than I ever had before. The second before my foot hit the first stair, every hair on my neck stood up. I felt like something was breathing down my neck. There's no exaggeration to say I jumped up the first flight. Once I scaled the 3rd flight, the impending doom began to recede, and a feeling of indescribable warmth filled my chest. All I could think was, "Thank you, God." As I neared the top, about to round the last bend into the city light, I risked a peek into the thick darkness below and saw nothing but an empty trail. I've never experienced this primal fear in my 24 years of life and hope I never do again. People have speculated it could be the work of a skinwalker. I don't know, having no knowledge myself, but I leave that to you. What do you think? My grandma was a prolific storyteller. She had loads of fascinating stories, all from 60 or 70 years ago. We were always captivated. But one story, about the night she saw a person become something else, stuck with me like no other. She grew up in a tiny settlement tucked between mesas, a place with maybe 20 families total, half of them probably related. She said everyone out there shared the same rule. If you hear something call your name after dark in the woods, you pretend you didn't. You keep your head down and walk faster. If they sound exactly like someone you know, walk faster still. And if you hear whistling in the woods, you run. She told me she learned the rule the hard way. When she was 18, she used to help her uncle herd goats in the evenings. One night, he didn't come back at sundown, so she went looking with an old lantern. She followed the path and found him on the ridge near the arroyo. But he wasn't alone. Next to him stood someone she recognized, her neighbor, Jonas. But he wasn't moving right. His body was bent, like his bones didn't belong to him anymore, like he was wearing himself wrong. Her uncle looked terrified, eyes wide, mouth twitching, making no sound. She tried calling out, and Jonas turned towards her. She said the way he smiled made her skin crawl because it didn't match his face. Her uncle snapped out of it long enough to grab her arm and drag her back down the ridge. He didn't speak until they reached the house. And when he finally did, he only said one thing: Jonas isn't Jonas anymore. Her family barred the doors. All night, they heard scratching at the walls, slow footsteps circling the property, and something tapping on the windows. Weeks later, word spread that Jonas had been seen wandering the flats alone, muttering to himself, tearing at his clothes like he was trying to peel them off. One night, he walked into the brush and vanished for good. Some say he walked on two legs, some say four, but no one ever went to look. Grandma always told me people don't just become skinwalkers. They unravel into them. It starts with wanting something so badly they carve pieces of themselves out to make room for it. It doesn't happen in an instant. It's like a shadow growing teeth, she said. I asked if she ever saw Jonas again, but she shook her head. But once, when I was maybe 12, I heard something outside the house call my name softly, almost familiar. Grandma grabbed my wrist so hard it hurt. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper I'd never heard before. Don't look, it can borrow faces. And I swear something scraped along the side of the house right after she said that. I've never forgotten that sound. While horseback riding in the Shawnee National Forest, something happened that I still can't shake. My friend and I planned an early morning trail ride from her campground. We saddled up around 8 a.m., her mom's German Shepherd mix trotting alongside. A few hours in, we reached a fork. One path was familiar, following a creek. The other was a brand new trail everyone was talking about, called the Hard One, which people said wasn't meant for older horses like ours. It climbed straight up a ridge, wrapped around a bluff, and dropped into the woods on the other side. The sign basically screamed, "Caution." We looked at each other and silently agreed, "Nope," and kept to the creek trail. We rounded the hill, and I watched the dog sprint ahead into tall grass. I figured he was beelining for the water, but halfway across the creek, a sound tore through the woods. It was an animal screaming, and it's not the kind of scream that makes you think something got spooked. This was real, gut-wrenching pain. For a second, I thought it was the dog until he hobbled out of the grass towards us, completely unharmed, ears pinned back. The screaming didn't subside, though. It sounded like a dog having a stroke. Again and again, we heard the noise. I actually work in an animal shelter, so I know canine distress sounds, and it was